Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. It has been an exhausting week, a fun week, but an exhausting week, trying to cram through all of my 7.1 content for YouTube and Twitch, and then also Dragon Quest III coming out. Plus, I've had some other stuff going on behind the scenes that you'll get to learn about eventually. It's just stuff that I can't share at the moment, but it all piled up in 1 week. In fact, there's one thing I was supposed to do, again, something I can't talk about, that I ended up not being able to do. So what a wild, wild week. It feels like barely any time has passed between the previous week and the next. And I've already got a ton of videos lined up for this week, actually. I skipped posting on Sunday, because I woke up late, actually. It's the only reason I slept through my alarm. But so Monday I have a video. Tuesday I'll release the Sunday video. Well, actually, maybe I won't skip the Sunday video. Right after this, I might record something for Sunday night, because I know something I can get out really, really quick that I want to release this week anyway. So maybe I won't skip Sunday. Thursday, I have a big video coming out, so look forward to that. And then I've got a couple of other things. I might have a video like every day this week, which will work out because, you know, we got Ultimate right around the corner. I'll be streaming it every day, and then all of my uploads will be Ultimate related for like 2 weeks after that. Well, yeah, it's going to be a fun time. But anyway, we should get on to this Q&A so I can get to working on those other things. I didn't get to a shower. I just walked in from the gym, ate something real quick, and then bam, I'm here to get started. So before I get started, thanks to our sponsors over on Patreon for supporting. Nobody has to support. Support to the channel is always optional as long as you watch the videos, enjoy them. That's it. There's nothing that's pay-gated behind Patreon or anything like that. But thanks to everyone who's supporting over there. But with that, let's see how the Q&A is. I didn't peek at it ahead of time this week, so I have no idea what we're looking at. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Greetings, my dude. Greetings as well. Hope the day treats you well. It's been good. Got 2 questions for you. Sure. Thinking about last week when you mentioned Sam being a magic user, technically. No, I said it was a caster. Caster meaning it has cast bars. Not it actually is a magic damage user. Ninja's a lot closer to being a melee, like, magic dealer than any of the other ones. Here's how literally do you think the animations are for our moves, or at least on debatably weapon-focused shops like Warrior, Samurai, and Viper? Are flashy effects actually happening? You mean, like, are other people seeing that? If they're skilled enough, I'd imagine technically in some cases our moves are too, on some jobs, are too fast for people who aren't, you know, combat oriented to fully understand or see it. But no, that's yeah, it's all ether infused. So we're doing all sorts of fancy things. That's why the trusts and everything have all the same fancy flashy moves most of the time, and sometimes even fancier and flashier ones, because, you know, we're all actually seeing that. What's your favorite Pokemon? If not a specific favorite, small handful. Lucario. Lucario has always been my favorite. He was actually the first shiny I caught when well, I mean, technically I didn't catch a shiny Lucario. I hatched his baby form, and then made it a Lucario when Sword and Shield came out. Because I had never really shiny hunted before. I did like a tiny bit in the previous the generation previous to that. And then Sword and Shield's when I went nuts, and that's when I was catching all the like version exclusive ones. I have all the version exclusive ones for Sword and Shield, for Legends Arceus, and then for Gen 9. What was Gen 9 called again? I have it. God, how have I forgotten? Those games were so disappointing. I've like blocked them out of my mind. I'm trying to remember because, like, I got the water Tauros and the fire Tauros. How can I not remember the name? That's bad when I don't remember the name of the most recent generation of Pokemon, because it was just that not good. At least the last DLC was pretty good. But I have like all the version exclusives, shinies for that too. But Lucario was the first, and he's still my favorite. Heard my phone go off at the very end of that last question. I lowered the volume on it. Hashtag Happy Mondays, Misters with Mr. Happy. That confused the heck out of me. Hey, Haps. Hi. Also, hey, if someone forgets. Hopefully not. 4 rapid questions about the same game. If you don't mind, they should be quick ones. Sure. Remember you played Theatrhythm Final Bar Line? Yes. Did you play at max difficulty? Yes. What was your favorite song to play? Favorite to play? I mean, for memes, I like to play the... what's the arcade called for Theater Rhythm? The Battle at Big Bridge version from the arcade, where it's like the most absolutely nutty thing ever for 2.5 minutes. I can beat it, but it's a mess on max difficulty. It's an absolute nonsense victory. That one's just funny, so I really enjoy playing that one. There's actually quite a few, but I think definitely a big one. I think if I did name one that is like I'm actually like capable of doing very well at, it would be Longfall Primals Edition. And lastly, what mechanic was the most difficult for you to learn? None. I played rhythm games growing up. I played Beatmania a little bit. I played mostly DDR and In the Groove. I was never really a Pump It Up person. I've played, like I said, I played Beatmania, DJ Max, Guitar Hero, Rock Band, you know, the more mainstream ones. What else? I'm forgetting another one that I've played. I did not like Osu. I was not an Osu fan or an Elite Beat Agents fan or any of those. I don't have VR, so I never played Beat Saber. Yeah, I'd say those are probably the main ones that I played. DDR was really the one where I dedicated most of my time, and rhythm is rhythm. So nothing was really that difficult. Now, having the dexterity to do it on a controller, that was a little weird. So there's like certain moves that aren't comfortable for me to do, but that would just come with practice that I don't put in nearly enough of. So I can't be upset like, I can't do this. Yeah, because I'm not putting the practice in. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi, Haps. Hi. Hope you're doing well and enjoyed the content in the patch. I have and am. Every week after a raise, I go through the logs with people to see where we can improve on a player-to-player basis, and the players who are interested always stick around. My question is, how do you deal with players who are seemingly unwilling to improve to fit the static, whether it's insisting other players stop doing things such as mitting at certain places, or melee not trying to stay in melee range as much as feasibly possible? Well, I mean, if someone's not looking to improve, then as a static, it becomes a matter of, is this person right or not right for us? Because some groups are okay with stuff like that, with having players that just don't make the concession, that don't try to make the improvement, don't acknowledge the improvement, don't take ownership or responsibility for the lack of improvement. And it's up to the static whether or not they want that person around. You can never make someone be something that they don't want to be. You can't force them. You can't motivate them if they're not already motivated. Sometimes the threat of being kicked motivates people, but most of the time people just go, it's just a video game. I don't care. I'll just go do something else. So that's honestly it. Whether it's insisting other players stop doing things such as mitting. So they like press a mitt and they won't stop pressing a mitt there. See, that one's really bad. In my opinion, that's worse than the melee trying to stay alive. Because truth be told, melee leaving melee range early for a mechanic and surviving is sometimes preferred over the melee who knows exactly when to leave the boss. Because sometimes either latency causes error or that player just, you know, slightly is off and makes the error and dies, and dying is always going to be worse. So it really depends on the severity of it. But the first one, refusing to move mid around, is like one of the worst things you could do, because mid is, especially nowadays, one of the more important things you need to have like calculated and control, especially with an ultimate around the corner. Another question, but why are so many high-end players unwilling to own up to mistakes that blame server ticks or the game itself when they die to mechanics? Because it's easier. Because they'll do it right like 8 out of 10 times, and those 2 times, they'll just swear it's not their fault. Where there are many times where a poor tick can result in deaths with the poison. So here's the thing. I had a major one in M3S where we all died to poison but landed behind the boss during barrage. Well, then that's not even a poor tick. That means the game lagged. You have to understand, the only way that happens is if everyone in the group has like 300 to 500 latency. And either you're all playing, like maybe we're all on OCE for some reason, and you play in like NA, like East Coast, and you had a ton of ping, or the game was not right. Because there's no way 8 people get hit by the poison there after doing it correctly. I'm just going to say it, that just doesn't happen unless the game has had a literal hiccup and your placement has not moved. So, but there, again, there's nothing you can do except for determine how much of it you're willing to put up with. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hi. Hope you're enjoying the patch. That and Dragon Quest 3. Recently PF'd Ukab Uut in half of top for the first time in over 2 months. Nice. Wanted to ask how miserable will PFing the new Ultimate be? Right on release, awful. Absolutely terrible. So I say that, but in reality, when nobody has made it anywhere in a fight, it's sometimes the least frustrating, because it's when people are most likely to be like, oh, let's like not disband very quickly. As for when you'll clear it, it'll probably be at the minimum a few weeks longer than when statics begin to clear it. Because usually the PF has to adopt updated strategies that are easy to PF. Sometimes you get like PFs that form like pseudo statics and they clear it much faster. But if you're purely like leaving PFs and joining PFs and it's 7 different people other than the occasional overlap of somebody else who's at the same prog point, then most of the time that takes a lot longer. That takes until the PF has like organized, dedicated strats. And I hate to say it, but usually a few weeks out after it's cleared for the first time, people have auto markers. And anything that is an auto marker mechanic, that's when it starts getting standardized. Like, I hate to say it, but that's really when the clear rates start going up in the PF, because sometimes people can't do those prio systems and they need that to brain off and do it. And then even then, sometimes they don't do it right. But early on, it'll be fun because it'll be new to everyone. Then there's going to be a middle point where progress is kind of stagnated, and then there'll be the end point a few weeks later during the prime of the NA holidays, in December, where everything's kind of equalized and everyone's trying to do the same thing, and it gets a lot faster. And then the PFs start organizing in like Discords and stuff. So you could get it done reasonably fast, faster than I think people would expect it to get done in the PF. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Happy. Hi. Hope you've enjoyed the patch, that things are stabilizing for you given everything you've been through lately. Yeah, it's just one or two more things and we'll be A-okay. Thank you. Hello. Having tried out 7.1 Dark, I find myself wondering if it presents an overall healthier baseline for the tanks in terms of self-sustain. I know the devs are loath to ever nerf jobs, but it's been difficult for me to not conclude that the tank imbalance and part of the issues healers are having can't be addressed without pulling back on just how much the tanks can heal themselves down. Do you think I'm off the mark on this? So, yes and no. The sustain that tanks have rarely matters in the content where the game is most difficult. It's most noticeable in easy content, which is why warriors are hilarious in places like dungeons. Can a Dark Knight do a dungeon fine? TBN, MIT, go back and forth with an abyssal drain in there on trash packs? Absolutely. I've seen Dark Knights that aren't any more of a burden to their party. It's the Dark Knights that pop a bunch of cooldowns and then TBN on top of their cooldowns, and then their TBN is off cooldown and their TBN is on cooldown and their cooldowns are not available. And then they get beat up for a few seconds and the healer has to suddenly put a bunch of it. That's where I see the mistakes happen. But now you could literally again, you could TBN, MIT, TBN, MIT again. And then those are the lighter MITs. And during the lighter MITs, maybe you need to abyssal drain. There's room for stuff like that. That makes it a lot better now. That being said, healers don't really have to GCD heal very often. And I think that some of that has to do with the level of self-sustain. And if healers want to be healers more, then things like that probably do need to get cut down. In my opinion, mitigation's the thing that needs to get cut down a lot for healers to feel like they actually need to heal to some capacity, but I'm not willing to expect them to go that far. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, Happy Mister. I almost just read it in the other order. So I almost said Mr. Happy on your behalf. I have a question regarding ultimate weapons. Sure, I know you asked the question at the media tour if there will be more ultimate weapons for new jobs from old ultimates. Yes, and the answer, as a refresher, was yes, but slowly. They're going to be adding weapons for the newer jobs first before going back and doing the older jobs that still need ultimate weapons. So that's why we got a few, but not a whole lot. Recently read they only had planned to give Picto and Viper the top weapons and not more will be added. If we want more in the future, we should give feedback. That's incorrect. So the exact answer was that they would slowly add them back, and it was not like a priority, but they were working on it. And that eventually, yes, all the jobs that don't have weapons for the old ones will have weapons for the old ones. This expansion, sure, but just don't expect a whole lot of them. Just a few more. I gotta hydrate after this. I got a little bit of a cough coming in. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Haps. Hi. Hope you enjoy your last week relaxing before Fru. No, you mean I'll be relaxing during Fru too? I was curious to learn what the best way to give feedback on changed missing features after updates was. I tend to take the lazy approach to leveling all my jobs to 100, and that sees me doing a lot of leveling, roulettes, and Wondrous Tales. I noticed this week after the update, you can no longer click on the image of the duty in the Wondrous Tales book anymore. Pre-patch, you could click on the example on the box that asks you to complete a certain extreme, and it would open up the duty finder and highlight. I have to log in. If that's a bug, then you just have to go to the forums and go to the bug section and then fill out their form very precisely and then do it. But I'd have to check because I haven't seen a single other person mention this, so it could have just been a one-time little flub. But it's possible. Hashtag Mr. Happy Monday. Hi, Haps. Hi. I hope you and Ivy are doing well. Schwell. I think she's taking a nap right now. Bit of a question about handling burnout with 14 rating. I think I already know what my answer will be, but let me actually read what the question is. Fru is just around the corner while I'm ready for it. I'm also struggling to find a reason to log into 14 otherwise besides doing weekly Unreal and Juno Alliance raid. How do you deal with burnout going into content you want to do? I just focus on the content that I want to do. Okay, that's not the answer I was going to give because good thing I actually read the question. I took a break back from 14, not sure if I need another one. If you're feeling burnout, just don't do something. I never understand the people's desire to do something that they're not like they're not looking forward to doing. Like, if you just want to do Fru, then just log in for Fru. Why do you need to log in for other things? So like, why do you feel the need to log in for other things? I just don't get that feeling. When I have something else to do that's not 14 related, I just do it. And when I don't, or if I just don't want to do 14 stuff, I just don't do it. I don't like, there's this like balance of, oh, what reasons can I make to play, or like, how can I overcome it? You overcome it by taking a break and deciding that, you know, you don't have the desire to play. So don't force yourself to do it, because then it gets worse and worse. It's hard for me to relate, because I don't get burned out. I just decide whether or not I'm in the mood to do something, and then I just do that or do something else. So it's just like, I have a completely different thought process to all this. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hey, Haps. Hi. My friend has done pretty much every coil fight with minimum item level, no echo. And they said that T7S is probably the hardest fight in the game. No, it isn't. It's completely unbelievable, but while I'm very petty, not petty enough to actually bother getting people together for that fight, so instead I'm asking you. No. T7S is just mildly tedious for about 4 people. It's one of the most boring DPS fights in the game, because there is so much like just stop DPS. There's no actual major DPS check other than making sure the boss pushes at a very exact time, and then binding 2 of the things in place. The hardest thing in that fight, there's the 2 hardest things, are bursting down the ads, which is hilarious because otherwise the DPS is incredibly boring, and getting rid of all of the poisons quickly enough. Everything else is pretty easy in that fight. Actually, I'll add one more thing. One thing that gets secretly kind of scary is the snipers when they pick a person. You need target, you really want target mid on whoever the snipers end up picking, because that shit hurts. No, T7S, it's mildly tedious for like 4 players. It's one of the most boring fights I've ever done. Like, whenever I've had a group that wants to go back and do T7S like low item level, because I've done low item level where we keep our max level skills and do it, because it's way more fun than being level 50. And I also did it on content. What, dude, on content, I was so bored doing that fight. Like, it was just so not fun. Turn 8 Savage, on the other hand, is an incredible time, and that one can be super tough and frustrating to manage every possible aspect that it has. T8S, I think, is much harder than T7. It asks for more from literally every other player: priority systems, callouts, a very rapid response to a phase change, understanding the percentage where the phase changes actually happen. The boss placement and AoE placement is way more strict. The shielding and healing checks are way more strict. It has tons of micro DPS checks, more than T7S even, that are way more stressful. Yeah, no, that fight is not that bad, in my opinion. It's not the hardest fight in the game. As for your second question, really like the idea of a first-time clear bonus that they're adding for Chaotic. I think they should expand it to more rate. Yeah, I think the idea is to expand it to more stuff. I think at the very least, Extreme Trials would be the next thing that they would add it to. But I think it is a good idea for things even down the line, like potentially Savages, just not to the same capacity. I have a feeling we're going to get like 25 tokens from our very first clear if all 24 people in Chaotic haven't cleared it before. Whereas in Savage, I can't imagine being the one guy who's done it before, doing it with 7 and getting 8 tokens and buying my body piece immediately. I can't imagine them ever allowing that. But at making it so that if there's any first timer, you get a second book, I think would be the more reasonable thing to expect them to do for Savage. The timing thing, absolutely not. But I think the first time bonus thing is actually a likely thing to hit a lot more pieces of content coming up. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello, hello. Hi, someone recent watcher, first time commenter. Welcome. When do you think you'll be adding older? Hey, funny, we just got this. Like I said earlier, I don't think it's going to be anytime. There's not going to be a regular schedule to it. Like, I think maybe once or twice more they'll add a couple of bits of a couple of the new weapons, but I don't expect to have them all before the end of this expansion. I don't expect them to all be in until next expansion. And by next expansion, they then need to add the weapons for Fru for whatever new jobs again, 8.0 as well. So it's quite the pickle they're in, but I suspect that it will take quite some time before we see the rest of it. Hey Haps, hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi. With the 7.1 changes to shield, healer, and mana, at this point, is there any reason to keep it around as a resource? In both high-end and low-end content, healers are really the only ones who interact with mana, and I only ever find it running thin when there are too many raises. Time to go the way of TP in favor of more job-specific gates, jobs like Blackwish. Well, that's the thing. You mentioned raises, but that's actually a major reason why we have mana exist. Trust me, I see people who run out of mana a lot. People who are just like so focused on interacting with the boss and the players, they forget to press their mana buttons. People who are bad at managing their 1 minutes, their stuff like their ether flows and whatnot. It's there to force you to interact with it, whether that's because you have to raise a lot or because you have buttons that actually have to be pressed in order to maintain it. It's ensuring that a player who fully understands and is comfortable with their job is rewarded for basically having a smooth time, and the players who aren't are essentially forced into improving those practices. And that's a good thing to have in the game, because that's generally an attitude you should be having towards any resource or any mistake that you're making, is how is the game signaling to me that this thing needs to improve? And when you run out of MP just because you've been doing too many suckers or whatever, that goes a long way. No, MP is definitely something that needs to stay in the game as a limitless resource. Let me put it this way. If Red Mage existed with still having their raise and MP was a limitless resource, come on, do I really need to explain that? Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. Hello. Hi. Looking good. Thanks. Question. What do you think the odds are they'll rework 11? 0. 0. That's it. It's not going to happen. What will eventually happen is the game will effectively, so right now it's in minor maintenance mode, essentially, where it is getting like small updates for things that newer players might use, but it's like really kind of done in terms of expanding and getting bigger, unless maybe they get bored and just decide to do another storyline like they did with Voracious Resurgence. Yeah, no, I think they're just preparing to effectively not update it anymore. The only thing I want to see is a single-player game in Final Fantasy XI's universe. Maybe one that plays like Final Fantasy XII, since Final Fantasy XII is kind of a single-player MMO. It'd be pretty cool to see a Final Fantasy XI-esque, like just Vana'diel as a setting with a very similar gameplay system to Final Fantasy XII. But no, they already wanted to do this. They had Final Fantasy XI Grandmasters in Japan. They were going to do Remake with Nexon. Both of those fell under. And I don't suspect that that's going to change anytime soon. But no, they're not going to rework it. After 20 plus years, they want to maintain the memory of what it is. Now, might they do 11 Classic at some point? I wouldn't be too surprised. Just because why not, right? Like to have the official like game servers be like that. Like they might. I won't be surprised if they do, but I don't think it's a priority. And I don't think they're really considering it much past a knowledge that there are private servers that exist and people do play on them and that they could be tapping into said players. But even then, I'm not entirely optimistic that they would bother with anything like that. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hello, Happy. Hi. Quick question about M4S. Is it better to hold burst right before the knockback to the other platform during the phase change? I believe it depends on how long the fight is actually dragging on. If memory serves, the answer is no. So I've always bursted there. Every team I've been on bursts before the knockback, because you only lose like maybe the last GCD, sometimes 2 of that burst, instead of sitting there having less burst. I think it depends on if you plan to skip. In terms of pure optimization, it might depend on if you plan to skip sunrise or not. No, because I think the 2 minutes still come up before sunrise comes up anyway. But no, there's no reason to hold it that long anyway, because you get basically the full burst window there at the end regardless. Like I said, maybe your last GCD gets cut off. But you might as well just go. There's just no reason to hold it that entire time. Hashtag hello, Mr. Happy. Not the proper hashtag, but still works. And the hello's in the hashtag, so it works. I recently had an idea for a dot class that could fit into 14 design. Let me tell you, the answer's probably no already. It'd be a ranged DPS to put 1 minute dot timers up with its primary GCDs, causing them to tick faster. It doesn't work. You see, the problem is you've already tried to make something that doesn't work in Final Fantasy 14. Okay. Let me try to figure out a programming way. So nothing in this game can make something tick faster. The dots are on a timer. Every dot's on a timer. They're not going to develop a different timer just for the shop's dots, right? They can't force the tick rate. What they can do is make it so that when you cast the spell, it reduces the duration and then does a flat potency amount of damage, which would, in theory, be equal to the dots, the amount of dot ticks that you would get in said time. That is as close as you're going to get. Removes 9 to 12 seconds from the dot, causing it to do that amount in tick rate and instant damage, but still keeps the dot up. Yeah, I mean, it's technically a dot job, but I don't see... The thing is, what you're not doing is actually causing them to tick faster. That's the thing that's incorrect. You're not causing them to tick faster. You're reducing the timer in favor of flat potency. The dot is essentially just a resource, is what you're trying to make it. It's not actually like a damage over time situation. It's you're placing. So, okay, let me put it this way. You could effectively achieve the same thing with almost any debuff. That's not a damage over time ability. Let's say you put up a debuff that has 5 stacks, right? And every time you cast the spell, a stack is consumed and you do bonus damage. But the stack doesn't have to do any damage. It could just do that. You've effectively done the exact same thing. So the dot part is irrelevant. And the dot part just means it has to interact with the game's tick rate, which you might as well just avoid. Because at that point, you're not even like the dot portion is not the important portion. It's actually the consumption of a debuff. Now, that's not an inherently bad idea. The consumption of a debuff that has to be maintained on a boss in order to make you do more damage. And that's not much different than like armor crushing for the kunais or building your resource on something. It's a resource, right? The debuff is a resource. You're just trying to make the debuff a dot, and the debuff being a dot makes things, in essence, more complicated than just making it a debuff that has so many stacks that you occasionally need to refresh. So that's the problem. If you want something to be dots, then the dot itself, the dots and the damage they actually deal over time need to be the core function of the job. Otherwise, it's not really a dot job. You're a debuff job, which is not wrong, not bad, but in 14, it's not beneficial to specifically make it a dot when you can make the interaction much cleaner by not doing it. Because then people are going to be like, oh, well, you know, what if the server tick is like at 1.2 seconds, then you subtract 15. But like, I don't know, like there's going to be all sorts of like really awful math that min-maxers have to do for that. That's not flat in terms of like whether or not it would be better to let the dot tick versus that. So it'd have to be like a gain. It couldn't even be just the dot's potency. You'd have to lower it by 15 seconds, but do 6 dot ticks worth, because you'd rather have the dot ticking and then doing something else while the dot don't. If we're going to do dots, they have to rework the tick system as far as I'm concerned. You have to be able to manipulate it, and it can't be this like interaction that just doesn't need dots to happen. Hashtag Mr. Happy Mondays. Hi, hello, hi. I've got a purely for fun question I've always wanted to ask Yoshida. If all the final ultimate boss phases bought, who do you think would win in lore? My best is Alexander, or I think Omega has to win. Omega's the only one with main character powers. Like, he has to win. Sometimes maybe main character powers aren't enough. I actually think Ultima Weapon is a pretty big contender there, because he literally absorbs the ether of all of the warriors of light that are fighting him and then blows everything up. Like, I don't know if that's technically better than Bahamut, but you know, that's frightening. Whereas Golden Bahamut is just like, oh, I powered up. It's like he was like base Goku and then he went Super Saiyan. You're like, yeah, that's a big deal, but he's not like taking in power infinitely like Ultima Weapon can. And but Omega has Dynamis powers, so it's I think it's Omega or Ultima, but probably Omega. Hashtag Mondays with Mr. Happy. No hello, so good thing we had the spares. What do you think about the volume of patch contents? For the most part, it's fine. I think they just need to move things that are long-form content to sooner in the expansions, because then those long-form contents get expanded on throughout the expansion, and every patch feels more substantial than it otherwise would. And the expansion feels more substantial when you have like exploration content or cosmic exploration or something in that capacity coming out earlier versus later. How different is it to old 14? It's pretty similar. 2.x 14 has like a lot. Like there were 3 extreme trials and a bonus hard mode in 2.1, which is a lot. I mean, compared to like how important was that? That was really all you had to do after doing Coil for 5 months because, Crystal Tower was whatever. Treasure maps weren't like, we didn't have dungeons for treasure maps yet. So it's a matter of a lot of systems that are in place that they still want you to interact with are still there and they get expanded upon. And then we get the usual stuff. And then we usually get something new on top of that pretty much every expansion. So it becomes a matter of how wide can you stretch your interests? And a lot of people can't stretch them that far. And quite frankly, I don't blame them. Nobody should be like, oh, you're done playing. Well, you haven't done this and you haven't done that. And you have to think, I don't want to do those things. They're not fun. Like the things I want to do, I want more of. Like that's how the consumerism works. It's like nobody's going to be like, well, I guess I have to do ocean fishing. I have to do big fishing. I have to go farm the gemstone mount. I have to go get the mount tokens from orange scripts. Like nobody should feel like they have to do all those things to get their enjoyment out of a game. But they also need to accept when not every content is for them. Like it's a two-way road. You know what I mean? Like you have to accept when somebody's not having fun and somebody has to accept that they're not having fun because the things they like there aren't enough of, not that there aren't things to do. Like, it's just a matter of accepting that you're not the only fucking person in the universe because that's just two sides of the same coin that I just described. Fairly new, and so many people saying the worst expansion with the least content. That was Endwalker. Endwalker was the worst expansion with the least content. Stormblood was the best. Actually, I don't know. No, Heaven's Ward's probably the worst content expansion we've ever had. Stormblood's the best content expansion we've ever had. And Endwalker's probably second worst. A lot of that has to do with all the new content being one or done. Thus, there's really no reason to log in. Dawn Trail's had substantial improvements to the actual quality of battle content. They've expanded upon the same systems, and they've added rewards to old systems where they don't normally add rewards before. So there's a lot of encouraging to go back and do stuff like orange scripts. Like, if you actually like doing those things, then it's nice to have a lot more collectibles, a lot more collection-based things. Like Whoops is having a ball, as he said on State of the Realm, just the volume of collectibles that he has access to because they just keep adding more between the face stuff and triple triad and big fish and everything. So it really comes down to your interests and how many that you want. If you just want raid content, you're literally never going to be pleased. It's like an impossible thing. Seems mostly the same, besides we're getting a chaotic, so understandable seeing some complaints. Some of my friends told me they were on something because of it and made me wonder how much content there used to be. It's literally the same. The only major difference is each different expansion has tried to do some different things and they've been better or worse. Like there are some people who hated when Eureka came out and kept getting expanded upon because they said it was garbage and they were wasting their time. Yet, it's a content that still is regularly populated by a lot of people. So it stood the test of time and still was very busy during Eureka's actual release. Bozia had a lot of the same, where people said the same thing, where we got two zones, we got 2 bonus raids in those zones, we got an extra large-scale raid and a savage mode of that large-scale raid. And yet people said the same thing in Shadowbringers. Like, there are new treasure maps with new rewards that people can get, and you can also go back and that's the thing. It's a matter of looking under a microscope and seeing only the things you like to do and having no interest in anything else, but blaming the game for those things. Like Endwalker was a genuine problem because they also weren't adding things that people wanted, and they were very limited in scope or didn't meet expectation. It was like a massive problem in terms of reward structure, execution, volume, everything. And to some capacity, we're not surprised because they did a lot of like retooling the early game in Endwalker, and we did get 2 ultimates, of course, going into that, and they tried Island Sanctuary, and they did add a new deep dungeon, even if it's not the most popular of them. It's like there's things there, but this expansion, like the number of things that are on the docket is insane, and they've also like release things or are releasing things we didn't even know about going into the expansion, like Chaotic, that we just weren't expecting. The quality of what we've gotten, I feel like, has been decently high. There's a few step downs. Like I think the DPS check of M4S really stands out, but I think this Savage tier as a whole is probably an overall win for the game. Even if that DPS check at the end is not too substantial. Yeah, I think we've overall done fairly well. I just think that where they release content is incorrect. I really think they need to stop holding tons of expansion stuff that they talk about at FanFest until 0.2x and beyond. Like, why would you wait 9 months after your expansion release to get some of the most important pieces of content that people have been flying to events to witness live the unveiling of these new pieces of content and get together for these fanfests. And yet it's something that by the time they reveal it, it's more than a year, sometimes a year and a half away. Like, you can't do that. You need to learn, and by you, I'm talking to Square. Square, you need to learn how to maintain the excitement and quality of your expansion from the moment of its release through the first half of it. If the second half still has updates, but it's just like at that point you're going through the motions and you're adding stuff to your explorations and you're adding stuff to Cosmic Exploration, you're adding your new Savage raids and you're adding your new Alliance raids and you're finishing this story and that's fine. You've already set the bar. Everyone's had their good time and is still having their good time if they want to keep playing while they're waiting for the next expansion because they're still getting new things that have been released. But just waiting so long is not a good idea, and that's the thing that needs to change. And this is the last question. Hashtag Mr. Monday is happy. Hello, Haps. Hi. Hope you've been well. Doing swell, thanks. Quick question. Where do I go or what do I do to understand all these PF shortcuts and acronyms? Feel like I am reading Greek. Well, the new Hall of the Novice helps with that a lot. No, I'm kidding. Barely do high end. I only started in Endwalker, going to EX3 blind. What's the name of the site? There's actually a website that has all the strats laid out. It might be called etherpf.com or like, what is it? Oh, it's like a 4-letter abbreviation. It's like, it's NA, NA something, is it NAPF? No, that's not right. There's a website that has all the strats, and then the strats help you understand what all the terminologies mean. Because a lot of the times it'll be like, paste bin means whatever the standard strat is, or, Hector means whatever the Hector video tells you to do, which can be better or worse, because sometimes there's 2 or 3 strats laid out, and then the PF still has to clarify. The big thing is, if you need to know how to do a fight for the PF, look up how to do the fight. Then look up the strat, and it all kind of comes together. Like, you literally just need to take whatever the PFs have and type it into your search engine, and you'll almost always find what it means, almost immediately. But that is the last question for this week's episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. There's a few other comments, some stuff about Dark Knight, some stuff about the theoretical question of ether sharing from last week, which, we do have an ether link, but again, it's not the same as dimensional fusion. Again, I still stand by the whole thing I said last week, where they're not going to try to fuse the 1st and the 13th, like, because it's like heads and tails of a coin, because they're not. It's like the heads of a brand new penny and the tails of some beat up 1920s penny. Like, that's gonna look jagged as fuck if it comes out looking like that, But yeah, that's going to be it for this week's Q&A. So thank you for watching. Remember, if you have a question, ask it in the comment section of the video below. Be sure to like and subscribe. And thanks again to the patrons for supporting. None of my content is pay-gated. That's just there in case people enjoy and want to throw a little bit extra. There's other ways to do that too. I just have options, effectively. And hopefully the option you take is at the very least watching the video and engaging with it. So with that, I will see you next week. I'll see you throughout the week. Again, we've got some exciting videos coming out this week, so be on the lookout. I'm making sure we keep ourselves busy before Ultimate, and it's gonna be a time. Anyway, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.